I was actually handling AI way back when, in 1985, for General Motors. And same old, same old. We weren't ready for AI then. 3 years later, we dropped the whole idea. This is, again, another iteration, although this time I think the computing power is quite a bit larger, 1,000 times. And now we're getting something useful done. For those of you who are more puristic in your approach, it might be... Hello? Check, 1, 2, yeah. It might be useful to think about what the heck intelligence means. In case you haven't noticed, AI today is nothing more than patterns. Just advanced patterns, that's all. But my thinking has changed 180 degrees twice over. First, I thought AI will never make it because it's simply patterns, will never get to intelligence. Now I think patterns may be sufficient to get to intelligence because intelligence may not be as smart as we think. It may be just as dumb as patterns. And that Darwinism is basically patterns, hit or miss. Anyway, that's another topic. So my topic today is about data, and primarily I'd like to focus on unstructured data. Everyone's familiar with structured data, the stuff from ERP, stuff that goes into Excel spreadsheets. That's easy. The unstructured data is tough. Emails, files, textual, SMS, social media. That's tough to process because, hey, on the structured side, it's easy to sort by zip code, but how the heck do you sort a paragraph? You need completely new approaches, new thinking, and new technologies. To put it in more familiar terms, this is the infrastructure we're familiar with, and that is usually the infrastructure that includes compute and storage. There is another part of infrastructure, and that's data. Go back to the laptop. That's data, and that's we're familiar with this part, which is talking about the structured data feeding into a sandbox. In case you didn't realize, all of analytics is simply a sandbox paradigm. Nothing more, nothing less. Some are big sandboxes, some are small. The other part of the data, which is probably 5 times larger, is the unstructured data. And small letters, if you can read that, is all of the emails and documents and SMS text and chats and social media and voice transcripts and so forth. There are some curious things about that will probably surprise you. One is that the paradigm of sandboxes is now ending. And now people want to go to the whole beach, if you will, and we're talking petabytes. Data wrangling in the tens of petabytes, and in some cases, hundreds of petabytes. By the way, apologies. We have, I'm with ZL Tech, we have a focus on servicing the Fortune 100 types with huge data sets, so most of my comments will be about very large data sets. The second thing about this is that the cost is absolutely prohibitive. So if you're thinking about cloud first, think again. A recent discussion with an enterprise talked about moving 77 petabytes into the cloud. You must be joking. It'll cost you over $100 million a year. So you need a hybrid approach. Some in the cloud, some on the ground. And there are many other ways to cut cost. I'll talk about it some other time. Thirdly, and this is the hard part, every single unstructured data, document, content is a liability. This is coming as news to many people because they haven't really faced litigation or being deposed in court. That'll kill you. When the opposing counsel says, Judge, I heard they have a petabyte in data breaks. We want to search it. And that's when your general counsel takes you to the back of the office and shoot you in the head. This is what my talk for the next few minutes will be, the world of unstructured data management. And by the way, that is critical to GenAI. Why? Because this source of data, unstructured data, includes, of course, Microsoft 365, Teams, Chat, Slack, Zoom, Box, Dropbox, and the rest of it. There's one thing that's common to all of them that is slowly dawning on the market, and that is it's 100% human-generated. And as you well know, all good and bad is started by humans. So anytime there's any nonsense going on, any crisis, you look towards this data. Now, we already have the obligation to collect, manage, and store and lifecycle all of this. If you're doing it all and it's all human, guess what? You've just created organizational memory and knowledge for the first time. That is a very, very powerful concept. And it's already validated when every time something happens, that's the first place to go to. The regulators, the litigators, law enforcement, corporate management. If you remember on Jan 7th, after that activity at the White House and on Capitol Hill, the first thing they wanted was all the SMS text from the Secret Service. In case you didn't know, all of these unstructured documents like emails and chats, it's like a smoking gun because it's got the rubber stamp, the stamp of the timestamp, from whom, to whom, content, intent, everything is in there. It's deadly. It's also very powerful for insights. And if you look closer, you're already obligated for governance reasons to track all of these documents, emails, logs, phone calls, documents, web logs, calendars. If you have all of this under your control and analysis, there's not a whole lot you don't know about every human participant. There may be data to know more about you than you know about yourself. That comes a little bit as a shock sometimes. We witnessed this recent argument where I said to an employee, "You're a procrastinator." And he said, "No." And then I showed the data. It's hard to argue. And no one less than the CEO of Microsoft has already admitted that the most valuable database is all the communications repository. Let's take a look at how large corporations address this. By the way, we have a preponderance of big financial institutions like Citibank, JPMC, Wells Fargo. They've been our customers for many, many, many years. So I'm going to compare and contrast some of the approaches they took. Number one, as I said, every analytics is a sandbox. And with the sandbox comes certain restrictions, such as, for example, it's a sampling game. You don't know if you have what you're looking for. It's a guessing game. You don't like it, you rinse and repeat, and it's just a waste of time and effort for the most part. Secondly, it's also a waste of time because what you get from the wild out there, you have to scrub, and then you find out that it's really not worth that long delay and effort. And lastly, this is something that's new. There is absolutely no oversight, no governance. It's the Wild West right now. You go pick whatever data you want, as you would structured data, and then you worry about whether you should have had it later. And so quite often you find the CEO's emails there, HR reviews, legal contracts, engineering IP, and this cannot go on. There has to be oversight. PII is all over the place, private information. So what's the way forward? That's all we know, sandboxes. Well, how about we forget the sandbox and do the beach? With the beach, you eliminate all of those errors. No sampling error, no scrubbing needed, everything's curated, and there's full governance oversight. Of course, it's a bit shocking. You say, hey, this is all a pipe dream. No one's ever done the beach. Well, actually, we have been doing it for 25 years, except it's focused very narrowly on some very big banks. The governance, by the way, has multiple legs. You need to satisfy litigators, e-discovery. You need to satisfy the CCO, the Chief Compliance Officer, and all the regulations from the SEC and, of course, the OCC. And then you need to satisfy records lifecycle management, and you need to satisfy privacy requirements. This is the difference between structured and unstructured data. Every document is potentially a human child you take under your care, and you are obliged by law to look after it from birth to burial. And if you don't, you'll hear from the General Counsel and the CCO and the Chief Risk Officer. Now, look at the difference. With the sandbox approach, maybe you'll look for a few shells, red shells, if you will. And maybe you'll find a few that you're looking for. Maybe. But if you scour the beach, you've got a pile of red shells, hundreds of feet high. Think of the difference of what you can do. You can change the entire question that you're asking. A complete game changer. And do it, I'll explain later, 1,000 times faster than today. But you might say, good grief, a beach, I have to cart like hundreds of thousands of tons of sand? No, you don't have to. Number one, why not virtualize the beach? This was something the big banks said, we can't do this. And one of them had, rough estimate, 750 petabytes. No can do. Is there a way we can cut down the cost? Yeah, maybe virtualize it, manage in place. Don't keep a copy of the original. That could cut down your cost by 90%, cut down legal risk, because when you get hit with a subpoena, we say, I don't have the data. I don't have the original document. Go away. And because you already have all of the extract, the intelligence of every document, and you don't have to go back to the original repository like 365, guess what? Your time to data analytics is sped up 1,000 times conservatively. That's almost like near real time. Again, these are all game changing. Second, you don't have to start with the hold on beach at the same time. Start with small use cases. In one particular use case, this one was outside the bank. They wanted to know, they had a particular problem, patent infringement lawsuit. Okay, instead of handling 100,000 employees at one time, how about we just take the US R&D folks, the product management guys at HQ, and the EU R&D, Instead of having 100,000 people covered, you have maybe 2,500 max. Suck that data into a virtual data management, maybe in the cloud, and then pump that into your GenAI feed, your e-discovery, your investigations, and your privacy. You can stand this up almost the same day. If you want backward data, that takes longer. If you want 6 years of data, 10 years of data, that'll take a bit longer. But you can start small. And then if you like it, then you can expand to other data. This has been the common approach to all the clients we've dealt with. Now, for those of you on the more technical side, you might want a more architectural view. This is what it looks like. This is, of course, the unstructured data. You need to access, curate, control, and data wrangle. And these are all the obligations you have to deliver for unstructured data. They're all multicolored because today they're all siloed. And being siloed, it'll just cause you a lot of heartburn because you can't sync up across. You're basically violating all your governance principles. It's too much data. Therefore, the need is to unify all of this into one platform so that one motion does everything. That's something that our clients learned about 5-6 years ago. It's very similar to what happened with ERP, by the way, in the 1980s. Instead of the best-of-breed silos that by IBM, you had the SAP and Bond come in with just one platform, one update, you're done. Same thing's happening here. And then you can feed governed data at 1,000 times the speed. This is a quick summary of all the new capabilities needed. Go to the sandbox, not the beach. Do in place to cut cost and risk. Do defensible disposition. That's another PhD by itself. You have to satisfy the risk audience. Defensible deletion gets you get out of jail free in case you delete the wrong documents. Time to data, 1,000 times faster. And here's something. That's the hard way to do it. How about focusing on the data? It's a lot easier. Shorter distance between 2 points. So there's been a lot of interest in getting this unstructured data feed into GenAI, but there are some challenges. One is the training and the cost of training. This is a quick snapshot of what it costs to train, and ChatGPT has gone through the roof, the latest version. Latest estimate is over $1 billion to train. In case you didn't know, a large bank will have possibly even more documents than Google. And it just happens that way. A large bank would easily have 50 billion to 100 billion. Now, with this in mind, what does it look like when you're trying to feed GenAI? Well, this is the old ChatGPT model, operate on the web, train it, and give you generic rules by the billions. But no one wants to touch this. They want their own enterprise data context. They want to have it in-house. But the trouble is that to train it is pretty darn tough. So you need the SLM and RAGs to make it happen. And that gives you the specific rules in the context of your data in the enterprise. And then secondly, you have to satisfy all the governance rules, e-discovery, compliance, records, and privacy. And lastly, make it affordable. Let's make it virtual. So these are the 3 steps that are needed for the new vision of unstructured data. Now, one thing about this is that the GenAI is too damn complex to reverse. And you have to reverse the process in the enterprise because you're obliged to forget data. But once it enters GenAI, you can't make GenAI forget. So one aspect of this is, how do we make it forget, like GDPR, the right to be forgotten? Well, instead of one monolithic Mona Lisa, you divide her into 1,000 puzzle pieces, jigsaw puzzle, and then you update as you go using SLM and RAG, which means you have to do a lot of wholesale data wrangling and fast. Now, what results is a massive number of use cases. This is just a simple early stage view of what can be done with use cases. Any question that touches a human participant is fair game, which means who knows what, who knows whom, and any human dynamics that you might want to know about. For example, by the way, it's great for AML and KYC. You're looking at human behavior which precedes some deed or action. And for the first time, you can potentially prevent the event before it happens, as opposed to always post-transaction. So let me give you some examples of use cases that are popping up that were never thought possible before. By the way, how many of you are actually up to your eyeballs in unstructured data projects? Not too many yet. Okay. So one example, talent. Who are my top performers? Okay. Instead of hiring McKinsey and splurging with $10 million to pay them, and then ending up with the stuff that will not actually survive because it's too heavy in implementation, the data already exists there. All you have to do is tease it out. This is a very easy way. Come talk to us at the booth, ZL Tech, and I'll tell you how to tease it out. And just click a button and you got your answer. The top performers are the ones that light up like Christmas bulbs. You look at the pattern of communications and you can tease them out. You can do the same thing, the influence graph, if you will, and instead of looking at the big bubbles, you look at the opposite. Turn it upside down and focus on the ends, the edges. And guess what? These are the guys who've been marginalized. That's your ESG. Of course, you might have to prepare the board of directors sometimes. And other insights that popped up is, this is interesting for me personally. You know, as you get more data under your belt, you get more insights. And it's pretty much like a straight line, except something miraculous happens when you get to near 100% capture. When you get near the 99, 100% capture, your value of insights shoots up like a rocket. Why? Because all of the initial one is based on insights from data that exists. When you get 100%, you can get insight from data that does not exist. Because you know definitively it does not exist. I have 100% capture. It didn't happen. And mostly, especially for investigations, especially for fraud and so forth, they go to great lengths to hide their tracks. So therefore, you have to be able to detect hidden tracks. So the missing footprints are what you're looking for. And just looking at this through a microscope, you see nothing. But this is what you see when you have 100% capture. And that's when you say, where are these footprints? That's massively powerful. You can't hide from that. Unless you're Meryl Streep and you're in character 24/7. One analogy I give is, if you want to sell it up the ladder, is the Sherlock Holmes parable where he solved a murder because on that night the dog didn't bark. Because the dog knew the murderer. But it would have meant nothing unless he heard the dog barking the other days of the week. In the end, this is what we're looking for. And I borrowed this from Hollywood, the Minority Report. If you have all of this data, you basically are getting pretty darn close, not in terms of the prediction, I won't go there yet, but in terms of understanding anything that's happened before. You have your new requirements, you combine structured and unstructured data, you go to the beach, not the sandbox, you do it virtually so you can afford to, and lastly, you have analytics and governance combined. This is the new paradigm going forward. I don't see much to add for the next 10, 20 years. And that concludes my presentation. This is a summary of the highlights. Look out for unstructured. It's all about the human side. The governance is mandatory. You're spending for it anyway. Might as well use it. And the data feed is already existing for SLM and RAG to train your GenAI. Your governance obligations should be automatically covered, or else you're just kind of flailing against the light. And virtualization makes it extremely affordable and reduce your liability and get to your data analytics 1,000 times faster. If you want a copy of the slide, by the way, just write to me. My email is over there. Or come talk to us at the booth. Do we have time for a question? No? Okay. Didn't I time that well?